You guys are seeing my screen. This is the Introduction to Accessible Educational Materials training session presented by the Wyoming Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse. So my name is Shelby Kapler. I am the project coordinator here for the Wyoming Assistive Technology, Wyoming Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse. This is a project housed under the Wyoming Institute for Disabilities, and I also work closely with the Wyoming Assistive Technology resources. So I've got my contact information here. I can be reached at 307-766-5770. My direct email is skapple1@uwyo.edu. You can also reach me at aem@uwyo.edu. So our learning objectives today, I hope that you will be able to identify the 4 primary categories of alternate format materials, as well as be able to define what a print disability is. Name at least 2 things that might indicate that a student could benefit from accessible educational materials, and identify at least 3 resources that are available on the Wyoming Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse website.
Hey Shelby, your presentation is moving, so people are having a hard time seeing your slides as you're zooming in.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I did not realize that. Okay, I will try to mitigate that. So what is AIM, Accessible Educational Materials, or AEM? Are print and technology-based materials that are primarily made up of coursework and education materials, including core materials like textbooks that are provided to students with print disabilities. Sorry. I do have a visual impairment myself, and so I use Zoom, but I didn't realize that this would happen during sharing my screen. Um, so accessible means equity for all students. We want to ensure that all students have equal access to participate in the general education classroom as best they can.
Shelby, do you want me to send me your PowerPoint real fast and I can share it for you?
That would be great. Sorry, everyone. Let's just pause really quick here. Right. And so while we wait for Krista to get that, I will go ahead and continue on. So other aids in assistive technologies can also help to help for students to learn, understand, and comprehend these materials. So who benefits from AIM? So accessible educational materials are provided to students with print disabilities. There are 3 categories of print disabilities, which includes visual impairment or blindness. It could be a learning disability like dyslexia, or it might be a physical impairment, like someone who has difficulty holding a book or turning the pages in a book. So those students who have difficulty interacting with standard printed text can benefit from accessible materials. Great, thanks, Krista. So we can move on one more. Perfect. So what to look for students who might benefit from accessible educational materials. If student is showing signs that they don't like to read or engage with printed materials, it could be an indicator that they're having some other difficulties besides just not liking to read. There could be an underlying reason for that. If the student has a below average reading level or shows difficulty with reading out loud, fluency or comprehension, might indicate some kind of a print disability. When the student requires extra time to read or extra time to comprehend the reading assignment or to complete assignments, might be an indication. Um, like I talked about, students who aren't able to hold the book or turn the pages independently could benefit from some kind of alternate format materials. If students have poor posture, a lot of times students with visual impairments will lean very close and have really poor posture trying to see and access those materials. And then, of course, if information from a comprehensive evaluation shows that the student could benefit from alternate format or a specialized format of uh, educational materials, then of course those should be provided. So what are the different types of alternate formats? So when we talk about alternate formats, we're talking about Braille, large print, audio materials like audiobooks, digital materials usually don't involve a human voice. It's usually a synthesized voice. And increasingly, we're adding tactile graphics onto those as well. How can accessible formats be found or purchased? So there are several ways to get a hold of accessible formats and alternate format materials. There are a number of online and physical repositories of accessible materials. We'll talk about several of those in this presentation. Accessible media producers, just like their name suggests, produce accessible materials. Publishers can also provide their materials directly to schools or school districts. A lot of times you might have to ask or maybe fill out a form, but then they can send you the PDF version of their materials. Using a Braille embosser or Braille translation software to create Braille materials is an option. You can create your own using voice recording. And it's also helpful to design inclusive materials right from the start. So ensuring that documents and things are built with accessibility in mind. Alternate formats can be accessed in a variety of ways. So of course on computers, tablets, and phones, you can access web platforms and apps on those devices, which would then allow access to these alternate format materials. Like digital books, audio books will be played from those types of devices. Digital media players. So there are several different types of these, everything from an iPod or an MP3 player, if anybody's still using those, to like a Victor reader, or the BARD is the Braille and Audio Reading Downloads system through the National Library Service. They offer these digital readers with cartridges that you can plug in. Many audiobooks are available through CDs or USBs, as well as other types of assistive technology tools, devices, apps, or software. So things like text to speech that are built into most devices, same with screen readers, as well as like refreshable Braille displays can be a way to access Braille material. And we can go on. Thank you. So why provide AIM? So the short answer is we want to ensure that all students have access to the materials and to an equal learning environment. But beyond that, it is the law. So both state and local education agencies are required by federal and local statutes and civil rights legislation to ensure that students with disabilities have access to their education and are able to participate and achieve in the general education environment. Um, accessible educational materials might be required in order to provide a free and appropriate public education, or FAPE. In addition, the IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, requires that IEP teams consider 5 special factors. One of these special factors is assistive technology. And in this case, accessible educational materials would be considered assistive technology because these AIM supports do help to ensure that students are able to participate in their education. So the responsibility, who needs to provide these accessible educational materials? It does fall on those state and local education agencies to ensure that accessible materials are being provided, even though it's the publishers who create the material and put it out there. Unfortunately, IDEA cannot place requirements on publishers to ensure that their materials are accessible or to provide accessible formats to schools. Therefore, it's up to the educators to drive the demand for these educational materials to be produced in accessible formats. We recommend that when purchasing textbooks and other core educational materials, that the schools include language in their contracts to ask the publishers to send their electronic files to an accessible media producer or to the National Instructional Materials Access Center so that those files can then be accessed later in accessible formats. And we'll get to the NIMAC in a few minutes. So a common question that I hear is, does providing accessible materials violate copyright law? Or I've had some people say that they can't provide certain things because of a copyrighted product. So in short, no, this does not violate copyright law. So the Chafee Amendment provides that it is not a violation or an infringement of copyright law for an authorized entity, which would be a school like you guys or someone like me, to reproduce or distribute in the United States copies or phonorecords of a previously produced literary work, as long as that photocopy or those copies are intended and distributed to people with print disabilities. So that's what an eligible person would be, is someone with a print disability. So I want to take a few minutes here and talk a little bit about the Wyoming Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse. Um, so we do have an accessible educational materials device lending library. I am a NIMAC authorized user. Again, I'll get into kind of what that is and what that means. We also provide trainings and tutorials, a lot like what we're doing here today, as well as provide resources and references. So diving a little bit deeper into the AIM Clearinghouse, this project is contracted through the Wyoming Department of Education. So this training is sponsored by WDE. As I said, the project, so we are housed within the Wyoming Institute for Disabilities, or WIND, and we work very closely with the Wyoming Assistive Technology Resources, or WATER. So through the AIM program, I am designated as a state authorized user for the NIMAC. And very briefly, this is a national repository of source files that can then be converted into accessible media for qualified students. So as the authorized user, I verify eligibility of students. I'm able to access and request materials, and I can have those materials sent to accessible media producers to be created. For example, if a school needs a book in Braille, I can send that source file to an accessible media producer who will then create that in Braille and send it to the specific school. A few other activities that we do. we maintain a website. So if you haven't already, please check out our Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse website. We attend conferences, host presentations, and host informational booths, trying to get more information out into the community. We conduct trainings, as well as respond to other state needs as they come up. So this is a screenshot of the homepage of the Wyoming Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse homepage. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into each of these. A couple of these tabs here, what is AIM and frequently asked questions. We're covering a lot of that information here today. Forms and contracts is exactly what it sounds like. So we talked about as schools purchase textbooks for the year, including language in the contract to ask publishers to also submit those accessible materials. You'll find some language on that forms and contracts page to help you do that. We'll talk about AIM devices, NIMAC resources, and a bunch of the stuff here in the next couple of slides. So the first is examples of AIM devices. So I just wanted to cover a few of these. And we can go on. So the first, many of you might be familiar with the C-Pen reader. So there is a newer version, the C-Pen Reader 2 pen. For those who are not familiar with this, it is a pen that looks a lot like the shape and size of a highlighter. It's got an LED screen on it. And where the nib of the pen would be is a little button with a light. And when that button is pressed and the light is on, a scanner. So it will scan lines of text and then read them back out loud to students. This is really helpful for students with learning disabilities who benefit from hearing text read aloud. It has many different features, so it's a really robust little pen. It's got a dictionary feature. It's got translation into several different languages. It will record audio, and it can also save this scanned text and audio and then import that into a computer. It's also got a headphone jack so that students can listen privately. And it also has an exam mode so that you can turn off many of the connectivity and dictionary features so that students would be able to use that on an exam without cheating. The only caveat or the biggest caveat to this is that the student has to have both the dexterity and the visual acuity to be able to scan a line of standard text. So this next one is the Orion TI-84 Plus Talking Graphing Calculator. So this is a TI-84 calculator, and it's got an attachment on the top which gives it the capacity to speak, as well as provide haptic and vibration feedback to the user. So that attachment on top turns it into a talking calculator. And I think the coolest feature on here is that when a graph is charted, this calculator will use tones as well as vibration feedback to describe the graph to the student. So lower tones indicate lower on the graph and higher tones indicate higher. It also uses like white noise below the x-axis. So it's a really cool tool. And I think this is what a lot of educators are using in the classroom. And so it's helpful to allow students to use the same technology that their peers are using and that teachers are also familiar with. We do have an adapted science materials kit, kind of while we're on that math and science strain. So this has a lot of different things in it. There's a number of graduated cylinders. There's a histogram. There's a weight or a balance with different mass sets, a funnel, And most of these tools have tactile, large print, and braille markings on them. So, for example, the beakers have floats in them so that basically it's a ruler that will stick out the top of the beaker. So, using the displacement method, students would be able to understand how much liquid is provided in that beaker. It's a really cool tool for um, students maybe with visual impairments to be able to access science. This next one is the pictures in a flash or PIAF machine. And so this uses capsule or swell paper with any carbon-based ink, whether that's a pen or ink from a printer. When this paper is passed through this machine, which looks a lot like a printer, it uses heat to raise the lines and create tactile graphics and raised line drawings. So again, a great tool for students with visual impairments or who might learn better tactily. This can be used in the example in the picture, like they use a graph and show the X and Y axis along with the line on the graph. It can be used for diagrams, or it could be used for art. Maybe a student wants to draw something and then pass it through and raise it so that they can tell what they've drawn. So lots of different applications for this, and it's really quick and immediate results. A couple other devices here. So digital video magnifiers are great for students who have low vision. Um, These come in all different shapes and sizes, although many have similar features. So it uses a digital camera to magnify the text. There's usually several different magnification levels. Usually can adjust the contrast. So for example, in the picture on the right, they have a white text on a black background, which can be helpful for some users. A lot of these have the ability to freeze an image and sometimes save it. Some um, video magnifiers have the option to provide text to speech, and some may have distance cameras as well as up close cameras or even self-facing cameras. So yeah, really cool there. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the Orcam Read. So this is another great device for reading and listening. So students who, again, benefit from listening can use this device to scan a page. So it's a little bit larger than like a flash drive. It's a handheld device that uses a laser to focus on an area on a page or a textbook. Then it will snap a picture and read that back out loud. It also uses AI to interact, and so a student could interact with gestures. If they point at a place on a page, then that Orcam Read will start reading from that particular spot where the student pointed. So like I said, we do have a lending library for many of these devices. Everything that I just showed you here, we do have available. If you're interested in borrowing devices, you can call, email, we can set up a video conference, or you're welcome to come in person. You can always come in and see what's available. You're welcome to check out our website, which is Wyoming AT for All, WY dot AT, the number 4, ALL.com. That's our device database, and you can browse to see what we have. This will allow you to search for a certain device or browse by category. If you don't see something that you're looking for or something that you might be interested in, let us know. We may have it, and sometimes the search engine can be a little bit tricky. So let us know if you don't see something that you're looking for. We'll have you complete a loan agreement so we can make sure you get that form if you're interested. And then we can send out the devices for 6 weeks to anyone in Wyoming. We don't require any kind of proof of disability or documentation other than Wyoming residency and having that signed loan agreement. So next is the NIMAC and related resources. So the NIMAC stands for the National Instructional Materials Access Center, which is a repository of source files that are sent directly from the publisher. And then the NIMAC houses these files so that authorized users can go in, like I said earlier, and get those materials um, produced by an accessible media producer. Um, NIMAS, the National Instructional Materials Accessibility Standard, is the actual file type that publishers submit. So it's usually an XML file. It's just a source file. These files are not student ready, so they do need to be converted and then submitted to an accessible media producer. You can go ahead and go on. Perfect. Learning Ally, many of you probably are familiar with, but this is another great tool for schools and for students who have reading disabilities. This is a repository of human-read books. Students must have a qualifying disability in order to access Learning Ally. But then there are many different options for reading, grade level content, as well as educational materials. And it's also got a suite of educator resources as well. Bookshare is another similar repository for students with reading disabilities. Again, need to be qualified with a print disability. But for both of these, as long as an educator, like a special education teacher or a librarian, in some cases, maybe a school psychologist, can certify students as having a print disability. Um, so Bookshare is an ebook library. They primarily have digital books, although in the last year or so, they've also started producing human-read books. And so there are many different titles and resources available here for students. Great. So if you are interested in requesting alternate format materials from the Wyoming Accessible Educational Materials Clearinghouse, again, visit our website on the forms page. You'll find the Wyoming Student Eligibility Form, which verifies that the student does have a qualified disability. When that's completed, it needs to be returned to Leslie Bechtel Van Orman at the Wyoming Department for Education. After that, you can submit a request form for accessible media, which would come to me. And at that point, I would be able to access the NIMAC and find those materials for your student. The AT Team Training tab. So this was a project that we've done for the last several years. This was designed to help Wyoming school districts create assistive technology teams within their district, which would then help to determine which students might benefit from assistive technology or from AIM, and then how to go about getting those materials for those students. The goal of this project was for districts to complete operating guidelines or AT procedures documents to help their district through those processes. We did have 11 districts participate from 2021 and then just ended in 2024. So we are not offering this project again this coming year, but we do have those materials and resources available on our website under that AT Teams tab. We do have a few different resources and contacts here. So we've got the Wyoming AIM Clearinghouse website, as well as the Wyoming Assistive Technology Resources website and contact information. Our AT for All database we talked about. And if you would like further information, you can reach out and check out the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials website. Right, here's references. I think we can kind of skip over that for now. Again, here's my contact information. We can move on to the next one. So just a few last minute reminders here as we're wrapping up. If you could please complete our short survey, we'll throw that link into the chat here. I believe Giselle has that. Okay, great. So if you could complete that, we are the Wyoming Assistive Technology Resources is grant funded, and this would help to support that work. If you'd like to receive updates on upcoming trainings as well as other types of assistive technology that are available, we do have featured equipment and trainings in our monthly dispatch email newsletter. It just comes out once a month. So if you'd like to sign up for that, you can do so on the Wyoming Assistive Technology Resources website. I do want to mention again that we're not offering any specific credits for this training or the series of trainings. But if anyone is interested in a certificate of attendance, we'll do that upon request. So please send me an email if you're interested in a certificate of attendance. And then lastly, please join us on our next training. It'll be on November 12th at 3:30 p.m. It will be on universal design for learning and the importance of access for all students.